Hi, Amanda, Asia, and Darby. So I'm going to be critiquing your projects today. Today's Thursday, and today's also the deadline for task 3, which is our final assignment, our final character assignment. Um, so if you have time today to work on any of the revisions I'm recommending, you can put your assignment directly into task 3, and I'll review it again tomorrow. If not, you can just work on this for the final submission and just go directly there and skip task 3, because otherwise I would just be reviewing, the same assignment again. So I hope that makes sense. So hopefully you can work on it today and get a little more feedback. That would be the most ideal thing. But as we are getting really close to the end of the class, I just wanted to mention that. Okay, in addition to what I'm going to say to your work today, I'd really recommend that you check out the group critique that I posted on Monday, I think, um, for the other students, because I have a lot of additional information there, and I just think it would be interesting as well if you take a look at what your others, your fellow students have worked on, just to really, get an experience of the class. Um, okay, Amanda, let's see here. Yeah, so Terrible Toys Todd. Okay, I, I think I'm probably going to suggest a few things that I may have already suggested in previous um, group critiques regarding your project. I had some suggestions, I think, down here maybe to clean this area up a little bit. You might want to check out that group critique for cleaning that up, that edge. But I think, and also I think I had some comments too about this, the cherry bomb. I don't know if you had a chance to see those or what you thought about my suggestions. I think that maybe I just got rid of that because it felt like it was maybe a little bit in the way. Um, okay, so I would say, and also sort of some, I guess, some additional comments. I think last week too, I think maybe you submitted your assignment a little late and I wasn't able to include it in the group critique. Um, but in any case, here's some things I'm thinking about your project. The first is I would love to see you work a little bit more on the color with this. Um, and if you take a look at my group critique that I just mentioned that to other students, I have a lot of kind of feedback in there about how students can work with adjustment layers. And that's one of the things you're required to actually do in this task is to include a few adjustment layers. Um, and adjustment layers are really easy. I can just show you one right now. Let's see here. What could we do here? You have like green and red and yellow and brown and black and silver and then blue. So that's a lot of different colors. You want to kind of narrow it down a little bit. I like kind of the black and silver. I think that kind of works really nicely for Terrible Toys Todd. So maybe you could also, I don't know, you could change this green to another color, or why don't we try this? So ultimately what you want to do is you want to kind of decide what kind of color scheme you're working with. That's a really good way to begin, is just say, hey, I want to work with maybe with um, blacks and grays and greens, whatever you want. And then I'm going to change all the other colors to match that. So how can we do that? Well, with adjustment layers. So let's just do an adjustment layer there. An easy way to do it is just go to hue and saturation. There's other ways to, you can sort of experiment in there, but I'm going to make sure to clip it. That's what I think one of your questions. And then I'm just going to see what I'm doing here. I'm just changing the hue. So I don't know. You could make it, blue. There's really anything you can do here. Sort of thinking, well, maybe we could match the blue of the text here. Or maybe we could make it sort of more of a reddish color to, if you want to just work with red and green, or we could also desaturate it, which might be kind of nice, so that it matches the legs, right? So that could be a good idea. Okay, so that's easy. So you can see how quick that was. That's how to work with an adjustment layer. Um, I would also recommend, maybe taking off this text in here. I feel like that's kind of not really necessary. Um, so I would use any of the correction tools that we studied in the previous classroom in a book exercise to erase these. I would just get rid of them. They're kind of distracting. I don't feel like anytime you have text on your object, it kind of takes away from your design. Okay, so I would work with that. You can also, something else you can do is selectively change colors. So let's go to the head and let's say like yellow. Maybe we don't want any yellow. Maybe you want to just stick with red. Maybe we want to change this yellow to a green to match this because it's the only little bit of yellow in there. So it's not really creating a lot of unities. So we can go in here and we can actually go back to hue and saturation here and we can select yellow. And so instead of all of the colors being selected in the head, we can just select the yellow color and it will, you see that? It actually just changes only the yellow. So we can kind of maybe make it a green. Let's just maybe maybe we could even make it a little darker to try to kind of match this. That's pretty good, isn't it? Make sure we've got that clipped and there. So okay. So I hope that helped. So your background's very simple, which is good. It's nice to have a simple background, although it's not necessarily. I would keep this as the last thing that you work on is the background. But if you can, it might be nice to have a background that's just as nice and simple, but maybe adds a little context to your character. Do you know what I mean? Like just a little, like a simple background. I would definitely review the group critique from, well, I talked a lot about it this week as well, but from last week as well for just, tips on that. What's happening here? There's this weird line in here, kind of distracting. Let's get rid of that. And then I might play with the text a bit more. Like definitely I would maybe change the color to maybe match the color in here. I don't know if I have the text here. I don't think I can play with it, but you could make it green or a bright red or something you want to stand out or this black, something that matches. Okay, so that's what I'd like you to work on is just continue to kind of keep experimenting with your character with adjustment layers and what else we've talked about. Hi, Asia. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look at your file. Okay, yes, here are all of your, apologize for the sawing you hear in the background. There's some work next door. Yeah, you've got all your layer masks here, which is awesome. I'd like to see you maybe take advantage a little bit more of some adjustment layers. Let's just dive in here and let's see, what we can do here. I'm going to start with your background. I like this background. I think it's a nice background. Let's just take a look here. What's going on? What's that layer here? Oh, I think maybe it's that for the shadow. So with your garden photo, so everything here in the garden photo is all blurry, right? Can you see that it's all blurred? I don't know if you had an original photo and you blurred it, or whether this is the way the photo looked. In either case, I would say it's good to not have everything blurred in a photo because then our eye sort of tends to look at it and it doesn't make sense to us, and it's good to maybe have this area underneath in focus and maybe blurred up at the top, right? If you take a look at the group critique I did last week and then this week for other students, you'll see me talking a lot about backgrounds and working with backgrounds. I would say, so looking at this, I would, what I do with this particular photo is I would blur up here so that we can try to reduce some of the distraction back here that is making your character not be very clear, right? But I would probably, again, try to get a photograph, that has some clarity, is in focus in some places, like maybe down here. Otherwise, again, it just doesn't look quite right. Okay, so that's what I would do here. Blurring is very easy. I would just duplicate this. I've demonstrated it like numerous times now in the group critique, but you want to just duplicate your background layer and then I would probably just do a field blur and then start by blurring the whole thing. I would really literally like blur out. You just don't need any of the stuff up here. you know. To get an understanding of the context of the background, um, you know, you only need to have a little bit in focus. We don't, you know, as a viewer, somebody who's looking at things, we don't need to see all of, like, we only need a little bit of information to understand, oh, that we're standing in some flowers, you know. So you could do, you know, kind of just play with this, kind of like putting these pins in here that allows us to manually, you know, work on the blurring. So maybe something like that, you know. Um, You know, then you could maybe even work with an adjustment layer in the background. It has a lot of, and again, you know, I wouldn't use this photo. I'm just sort of experimenting on it, and I wouldn't use it for the reasons I just mentioned. I might also, the background's very bright in terms of color, and it's taking over, like it's like overshadowing your character. So I might even do something like maybe desaturate it a little bit, you know, just to kind of tone it down a little bit so it's not so bright. You know, just little things like that. It's all about the details, you know. In terms of your character, I think overall the body is looking pretty good. There's a few sort of little kind of tiny sort of elements on here that, you know, that I don't think they really add to your character necessarily, like the apron. I might just take that off, take all of these little elements off that are kind of, um, you know, they're hard to see, so they're not necessarily adding to your character. Because your character already has some really good elements in it. You know, I really think that you don't really um, need need more. So okay, now we're really coming along here. I might make these little guys here bigger. These, you know, the watering can and maybe the little trowel that you have, just to kind of they got so tiny, and why not make them a little bit bigger so that they're, you know, a little more exaggerated and something like that. Then I would play with your colors the same way that I just did with Amanda's. Decide what your color harmony is and change things to match it. Like maybe it's going to be purples and yellows, or, you know, purples and greens, you know, whatever you want. Don't worry about necessarily even changing things to make them look like they're not the color that you would expect them to be. Do you know what I mean? Like carrots don't have to be green. Maybe you want to keep them green. Tomatoes can be different colors than, you know, red. This is an imaginary project, so it's really up to you what you want to do with, you know what I mean? The real world doesn't really apply when you're a designer. You can do whatever you want. I like the way this color here picks up on the color of your eggplant. I think that looks really nice. So in a way, maybe you could keep with the purple idea and just kind of start to turn things, you know, use that as one of your base colors, you know, like maybe your watering can, you could add an adjustment layer here to your watering can and, you know, make it purple. Let's just darken it a little bit, see, desaturate it. You know, I don't know if I quite like that yet. But you know, that's a little, you can see now it's starting to match this. So, okay, well, I hope that's helped. Um, just keep experimenting. I'd love to see this again in our group critique tomorrow, because I think if you change out this background, you know, we could potentially see a lot of changes with it. That would be good to look at. I would also kind of, it looks like you've got some issues here with your layer mask, so I might clean those up. You know, go to that layer mask here and, you know, take the brush tool and try to clean up these edges here. I did a lot of work on layer masks in the group critique in week 3 if you want to see some more kind of like experimenting with it, but you see I'm just sort of cleaning this up. If I were you, you know, with this background, I might just redo this whole layer mask to try to clean it up. You should be able to get a really nice selection on there with that photograph, so I might just delete that layer mask and just give it another try so that you don't, you know, save yourself some work of trying to clean this up. Um, and okay, All right, keep working on it, and I look forward to hopefully seeing it again later on this week. Barbie, I'm glad you were able to submit your assignment so that we can take a look at it. Um, yeah, so you had your layer mask. I think you've got layer mask here, which is great. That's a very big part of this class. I would say that some of the things that I would look at right now, first of all, is building your character a little bit more. It still feels like it's more of a collection of objects than a character. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like we're quite seeing a character developed yet. So some things that I would just say is, maybe take out these elements for now that really are not, we don't even really see them. They're just blending in. And then, maybe work with the bananas. You've got these nice bananas. They need to really, I think, really show up a little bit more as arms, which is, I think, what I think that's maybe you were thinking of as ears, but maybe they could be arms. Um, kind of think about how can you make this look more like a character design, like a character, like living, breathing. So maybe it needs to have some arms. Um, maybe take your hamburger and make it smaller. So, because we've got a lot of, we've got some space here. We've got kind of cramped here for space. And so maybe we could make this guy smaller for now. And maybe somehow that could be, you know, so we can maybe get that. So I would say so this grill I think is somewhat of a problematic element. It's got all these like issues here with selections, with these white little bits. I would maybe try to find something else that you could use, for a body. Like think of like all kinds of different foods that you could work with, like a tomato or a green pepper, um, potato, any type of round food that you might pop in here. I think that might work a little bit better. And I might even do the same thing with these guys for now, is maybe take these out. Maybe you could add them later if you work on them more. But take them out for now and maybe just work on, starting, you've got these maybe these um, arms here. You could work with another, so you get a body, maybe you have an arm that you add. Kind of so you're sort of a little bit behind in terms of developing the character, so you might want to just sit down and, maybe you could have two banana arms instead of the pepper arms. It always is helpful to have like symmetry here, so let's get rid of that for the moment. The nice thing about Photoshop is you can keep all these in your layers panel and just turn them off, and then later on you can bring them back if you like. But let's just sort of see what we've got here. So these could be arms, so we could start with that and, get a body in there, so that's where I'd start with, okay? Building your body a little bit more. If you have some extra time, add a background, get your background going, what's going to happen behind your background. You might need to move your text a little bit to find a place that's maybe a little bit out of the way, like sometimes it helps to put it all in one row, rather than having it stacked like this because it takes up less room. So maybe it could go at the top so you have room for your body. Okay, well, I hope that's helped. I just keep experimenting. Spend the day today if you have time, a few hours building your characters. Submit it again for the group critique tomorrow, and we can look at it again and hopefully take it to the next level.